I've been sitting on this for a while now, trying to decide if I should even put it out there. But keeping it bottled up isn't helping anymore. So here we are. I'm not going to use my real name, and I'm going to keep some details vague because, honestly, I'm still not entirely sure this is over. This happened during my junior year of college. I was attending a mid-sized university in the Pacific Northwest. I won't say which one, but it's one of those schools where everyone knows everyone, or at least it feels that way. I was majoring in psychology and minoring in film studies, which meant I spent a lot of time in the library and the media lab editing videos for class projects. The media lab was in the basement of the communications building. It was this windowless space with maybe 12 computer stations, all equipped with editing software, sound equipment, and these massive monitors. The lab was open 24/7 during the semester, accessible with a student ID, and it was usually pretty dead after 10 p.m. That's when I preferred to work because I could focus without people looking over my shoulder or talking loudly on their phones. I'd been going there late at night for most of the semester without any issues. I'd swipe in around 9 or 10 p.m., work on whatever project I had due, and leave around 2 or 3 in the morning. The building itself was always locked after 8 p.m., so you needed your ID to get in and out. It felt safe, secure even. There was this one guy I started seeing regularly around the same time I'd be there. I don't know his name, and I never asked. He was maybe mid-20s, average height, dark hair, usually hidden under a baseball cap. He always wore the same black North Face jacket and had this beaten-up backpack covered in band stickers. He'd sit at one of the stations near the back, headphones on, working on something on his laptop. At first, I didn't think anything of it. We were both night owls using the lab when it was quiet. We'd occasionally make eye contact when one of us got up to use the bathroom or grab water from the fountain in the hallway. But we never spoke. Just that awkward half-smile acknowledgement you give to people you see regularly, but don't actually know. This went on for maybe 3 weeks. Then one night, I noticed something weird. I was sitting at my usual station near the front of the room, and I happened to glance at the reflection in my monitor when the screen went black for a second during a render. I could see him in the reflection. He wasn't looking at his laptop. He was looking at me. I turned around quickly, but by the time I did, he was already staring down at his screen like nothing had happened. I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe he'd been zoning out and his eyes just happened to land in my direction. It happens. But then it kept happening. Every time I'd check the reflection or glance over my shoulder, he'd be looking at me. And every time I'd turn fully around to confront it, he'd already be back to looking at his laptop. It started to make me uncomfortable, but I didn't know what to do about it. What was I supposed to say? "Excuse me, I think you're looking at me too much?" That felt ridiculous. Around that same time, I started noticing other things. Small things that individually didn't mean much, but collectively started to form a pattern. Like how he always seemed to arrive at the lab about 10 minutes after I did, even if I varied my schedule. Or how he'd always leave within a few minutes of me packing up my stuff, even if it was clear he wasn't done with whatever he was working on. One night, I decided to test it. I got to the lab earlier than usual, around 8 p.m. instead of 10. I figured if he showed up shortly after, that would confirm he was somehow timing his visits around mine. Sure enough, about 15 minutes after I sat down, I heard the door beep and saw him walk in. Same jacket, same backpack, same routine. My stomach dropped. There was no way that was a coincidence. The lab had hundreds of students using it at different times. What were the odds he'd just happened to show up 15 minutes after me on a night when I came 2 hours earlier than normal? I tried to focus on my work, but I couldn't. I kept glancing at the reflection in my monitor, and every time I did, he was looking at me. Not at his laptop, at me. I started to panic a little. I closed my laptop, shoved it in my bag, and walked out without saying anything. I didn't even finish what I was working on. As I was walking down the hallway toward the exit, I heard the door to the lab open behind me. I didn't turn around. I just walked faster. When I got to the main exit and swiped my ID to unlock the door, I heard footsteps behind me, getting closer. I pushed through the door and started speed walking across campus toward my dorm, which was about a 10-minute walk away. Halfway there, I pulled out my phone and pretended to take a call. I slowed down a little and glanced over my shoulder like I was just casually looking around while talking. He was there, about 20 feet behind me, walking in the same direction. I felt my chest tighten. I turned down a side path that wasn't on the way to my dorm, just to see what he'd do. He turned down the same path. That's when I started running. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed to get somewhere with people. I ran toward the student union, which was still open and usually had people hanging out, even late at night. When I got there, I ducked inside and went straight to the food court area, where there were maybe a dozen students scattered around studying or eating. I sat down at a table near the entrance and pulled out my phone, trying to catch my breath. A few minutes later, I saw him walk past the windows outside. He slowed down as he passed, looked inside, and made direct eye contact with me. Then he kept walking. I sat there for over an hour, too scared to leave. Eventually, I texted my roommate and asked her to come meet me so I wouldn't have to walk back alone. When I told her what happened, she said I should report it to campus security. I did the next day. I went to the public safety office and explained the whole thing. The guy in the lab, how he always seemed to be there when I was, how he'd followed me across campus. The officer I spoke to was polite but didn't seem overly concerned. He asked if the guy had ever approached me or said anything threatening. I said no. He asked if I had any proof he was following me. I didn't, not really. Just my word. He told me they'd increase patrols around the communications building and that I should call their emergency line if I ever felt unsafe. He also suggested I try using the lab during busier hours. I nodded and thanked him, but I left feeling like nothing was going to change. I stopped going to the lab at night after that. I started editing my projects during the day, even though it was crowded and loud, and I hated it. But at least I felt safe. For about 2 weeks, I didn't see the guy at all. I started to think maybe he'd gotten the message or just moved on. Then I saw him at the dining hall. I was sitting with some friends during lunch, and I happened to glance toward the entrance. He was standing there, just inside the doorway, scanning the room. When his eyes landed on me, he didn't look away. He just stood there, staring. My friends noticed I'd gone quiet and asked if I was okay. I pointed him out, and one of them, a guy named Eric, stood up and started walking toward him. The second Eric moved, the guy turned and walked out. Eric followed him outside, but by the time he got there, the guy was gone. Eric came back and asked if I knew who he was. I shook my head. He told me I should report it again, and this time, maybe get campus police to look at security footage. I did. I went back to public safety and told them about the dining hall incident. This time, they seemed to take it more seriously. They pulled footage from the communications building and the dining hall. A few days later, they called me back in. They told me they'd identified the guy. He wasn't a student. He didn't work for the university. and his ID access to campus buildings had been flagged because he'd been swiping in using a stolen student ID. They said they'd banned him from campus, and that if he was seen again, he'd be arrested for trespassing. They asked if I wanted to file a formal police report. I said yes. The officer told me they'd forward everything to the local police and that someone would follow up with me. That was 3 months ago. I never heard back from the police. I never saw the guy again on campus either. But here's the thing. 2 weeks ago, I was at a coffee shop off campus, about 3 miles from the university. I was sitting by the window working on my laptop when I saw him walk past outside. Same jacket, same backpack. He didn't look in. He just walked past like he was heading somewhere. But the coffee shop I was at isn't near anything. It's in a quiet residential neighborhood. There's no reason he'd be walking through there unless he was going to a specific house or following someone. I left immediately. I didn't finish my coffee. I just packed up my stuff and drove home. I've been thinking about it non-stop since then. How did he know I was there? Was it a coincidence? But if it wasn't a coincidence, how long has he been following me? And more importantly, how much does he know about me? I'm graduating in a few months, and honestly, I'm counting down the days. I just want to leave this town and start over somewhere he can't find me. But part of me worries that no matter where I go, he'll figure out a way to show up again. Because if he found me at that coffee shop, what's stopping him from finding me anywhere else? I haven't told my parents. I haven't told most of my friends. I don't know what I'd even say. That I have a stalker who's never technically done anything illegal enough to get arrested? That I'm scared of a guy whose name I don't even know? If you're reading this and you've ever felt like someone was watching you, trust your gut. Don't brush it off. Don't wait for it to escalate. Because by the time it does, it might be too late. My name's Trevor. I'm 25, and up until about 6 months ago, I was working as a night auditor at a mid-tier hotel chain in Arizona. It's one of those places that's nice enough for business travelers, but cheap enough for families on road trips. Nothing fancy, but clean and functional. The night auditor position is exactly what it sounds like. You work the overnight shift, usually 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and you're responsible for checking in late arrivals, running the day's financial reports, and basically keeping an eye on things while everyone else is asleep. It's a pretty easy job. Most nights, you're just sitting behind the front desk, scrolling through your phone or watching Netflix on the office computer. The hotel I worked at had about 120 rooms spread across 4 floors. The layout was pretty standard. A lobby with a front desk, a small breakfast area, a fitness center, and a pool. Behind the front desk was a back office where we kept supplies, filed paperwork, and had a computer for running reports. There was also a security monitor that showed feeds from cameras positioned around the property. The parking lot, the lobby, the hallways on each floor, and the pool area. I'd been working there for about 8 months when this happened, so I was pretty comfortable with the routine. Most nights were uneventful. I'd check in maybe 2 or 3 late arrivals, run the audit reports around 2 a.m., and spend the rest of the time killing time until the morning shift showed up. But there was this one night, a Tuesday in late March, that completely changed how I felt about working alone. It started around 1:30 a.m. I was sitting in the back office working on the audit reports when I heard the front desk bell ring. I got up and walked out to the lobby, expecting to see a guest who needed something. But the lobby was empty. I looked around, checked the doors to make sure no one had come in, and then shrugged it off. Sometimes the bell would ring on its own, if something bumped into the desk or if there was a weird vibration from the AC unit. It wasn't common, but it happened. I went back to the office and sat down. About 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. This time, I got up faster. I walked into the lobby, and again, no one was there. I checked the security monitor to see if anyone had been near the desk. The lobby camera showed nothing. No movement, no one anywhere near the front desk. I started to feel a little uneasy, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mechanical issue with the bell. Maybe I'd bumped it earlier without realizing it, and it was ringing on a delay. I made a mental note to check it in the morning and went back to work. Around 2:15 a.m., I finished the reports and decided to do a quick walkthrough of the property. Part of my job was to check the hallways and common areas to make sure everything was secure. I grabbed my key card and started on the first floor. Everything looked normal. Quiet, empty hallways, no lights on in any of the rooms. I moved to the second floor, then the third. Same thing. When I got to the fourth floor, though, something felt off. The hallway was darker than usual. I realized one of the overhead lights was out, which wasn't a huge deal, but it made the space feel more oppressive than it should have. As I was walking down the hallway, I heard a noise behind me. It sounded like a door closing. I turned around quickly, but all the doors were shut. I stood there for a second, listening. Then I heard it again. A soft click, like a door latch catching. But I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I walked back down the hallway, checking each door as I passed. They were all secure. No one was in the hallway except me. I told myself I was being paranoid and headed back to the elevator. As I was waiting for it to arrive, I glanced down the hallway one more time. That's when I saw it. One of the doors at the far end of the hallway was open. Not wide open, just cracked, maybe an inch or two. I knew for a fact it had been closed when I walked past it a minute ago. I checked every door. My heart started pounding. I walked toward the door slowly, trying to think of a logical explanation. Maybe a guest had opened it and stepped back inside quickly. Maybe the latch hadn't caught properly and it had swung open on its own. But as I got closer, I realized the room number, 418. I checked my phone to pull up the system. Room 418 was vacant. No one was checked in. I stopped a few feet from the door and called out, "Hello, hotel security. If anyone's in there, you need to come out." No response. I pushed the door open slowly and reached inside to flip the light switch. The room was empty. The bed was made, the curtains were drawn, and there was no sign that anyone had been inside. I backed out of the room and pulled the door shut, making sure it latched properly this time. Then I got the hell out of that hallway and went back to the lobby. I checked the security footage for the fourth floor, scrubbing through the last 20 minutes. The camera didn't cover that specific hallway angle well, but I could see the elevator area. No one had gone up to the fourth floor except me. I tried to calm down. Maybe the door hadn't been fully closed when housekeeping left the room that afternoon. Maybe I just hadn't noticed it until now. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I checked every door. Around 3 a.m., I was back in the office trying to distract myself with my phone when I heard footsteps in the lobby. Not soft footsteps either. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, like someone walking with purpose. I stood up and walked to the doorway to look out into the lobby. No one was there. I stepped fully into the lobby and looked around. The front doors were locked. The elevator doors were closed. There was no one anywhere in sight. But I'd heard those footsteps clear as day. I walked over to the security monitor and pulled up the lobby camera feed. I rewound it to about 30 seconds before I came out of the office. The footage showed the empty lobby. No movement, no one walking through. But then I noticed something. The timestamp on the feed skipped. It went from 2:58:23 directly to 2:58:47. 24 seconds were just gone. I felt a chill run down my spine. I checked the other camera feeds. Same thing, all of them had the same gap in the footage. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a technical glitch? A power surge? But if that were the case, wouldn't the cameras have shut off completely? I called my manager. I know it was the middle of the night, but I didn't care. I needed to talk to someone. He answered on the fourth ring, groggy and annoyed. I explained what was happening. The bell ringing on its own, the door on the fourth floor, the footsteps, the missing footage. He was quiet for a moment, then told me to stay in the office with the door locked and that he'd come in. He showed up about 40 minutes later. By then, I was a nervous wreck. He checked the security footage himself and confirmed the timestamp gap. He went up to the fourth floor to check room 418, and everything was still secure. He didn't have an explanation for any of it. But he told me he'd report the technical issues to corporate and that I should call him if anything else happened. Nothing else happened that night. My shift ended at 7 a.m., and I went home exhausted and on edge. I came back for my next shift 2 nights later, and everything seemed normal at first. But then, around 2 a.m., it started again. The bell rang, the footsteps, and this time, when I checked the fourth floor, room 418's door was open again. I didn't go inside this time. I just pulled it shut and left. When I got back to the lobby, I checked the footage. Another gap in the timestamp. This time, almost a full minute was missing. I quit the next week. My manager tried to convince me to stay, offered me a raise, said they'd move me to a different shift. But I was done. I don't know what was happening in that hotel, and honestly, I don't want to know. Maybe it was something supernatural. Maybe it was something else entirely. But whatever it was, I wasn't sticking around to find out.